Matt, there's a new sheriff in town. You heard about this?
There is.
Yeah, it's a big time. We have this breaking news. Howard Lutnick writing in the Financial Times about the Trump administration's appearance at Davos. The answer is simple. We're not going to Davos to uphold the status quo. We're going to confront it head on. We're at Davos to make one thing crystal clear. With President Trump, capitalism has a new sheriff in town. And with that, I mean, you kind of got to agree, right?
The sheriff of capitalism is a guy who kind of veers into maybe we'll invade this country, maybe we'll do a regime change here, or maybe just scratch that down to just a kidnapping of the very top figure. Yeah, it's Law and Order is back. It's great.
Yeah. No, I mean, what we're watching right now, folks, is a complete and total breakdown, not only of, the international rules-based order. Let's not forget that this was an order that, was in place for one of the bloodiest genocides in recent memory. But Trump is certainly making his mark on history. He's breaking a lot of things. We're going to get into it. We have Hasan Piker joining us in just a little bit. But before that, I want to talk with you a little bit, Matt, because, what we are seeing in this country and internationally is truly horrifying. And it's hard for me to shed too much of a tear about Trump kind of creating a crisis around Davos. But we are entering, I think, into a new and very unsettling and dangerous world.
A time of reckless and cruelty mixed with impotence, which is just like a lot of these moves aren't America is about to lead the next century, which wouldn't make them any better. It's America is realizing that its ability to dictate to the world is over, and now it's the time to use what remains of those powers for whatever you can.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is something that's kind of deeply connected with all the stuff that we're seeing from Trump right now. One, on the international stage, and two, domestically here, as we continue to see more and more horrifying reports out of Minneapolis. I wanted to just take a second before we get to Hasan and make a quick point here, because these are the kind of moments that can make people feel powerless. And this is one of those moments where I think that it's really important to remember where our power comes from, right? Why is it that socialists believe, talk about, and focus so much on the working class, right? It's not just because of the exploitation of workers. It's also because working people have tremendous power. And that is something that you can see the people in positions of authority in this government are very, very fearful of. I really want to shout out what is going on right now in Minneapolis, where we have this general strike called from multiple unions, including the SEIU, CWA, and many, many, many other unions, along with people who aren't organized in a union, going out and refusing to work, right? And this is something that shows where the collective power of the working classes. And when you see people wielding that power in this way, you absolutely have to support it. This is something that the people at the very top of our society are frightened by. A big part of what ICE is doing is, one, yes, engaging in like a racial terror against this country and people all across the U.S. It's also a labor discipline tool. If y'all remember last week, Matt and I kind of talked about how we became socialists in the first place. And I shared a story about how in my first job working construction, other people showed up and stood up for me. There's a very important factor here is that the people who did that, stood up for me, were undocumented workers. They were exactly the kind of people who ICE is targeting right now. And what ICE is trying to do is, one, make those kind of folks fearful, right? So that bosses can continue to exploit them, in fact, exploit them even more, while also creating just a general climate of fear across this country. Because if you're seeing ICE agents, for example, murdering American citizens in the street, what isn't possible when it comes to the way that this government and the people in authority, what will they not do to kind of maintain their power, right? These are attempts at terrorizing the American people. So that's why it's so important to see what we're seeing with this general strike. And I wanted to kind of share something that I've been thinking about in moments like this. I do like to go back and read one of the greats, Frantz Fanon, and I've been rereading The Wretched of the Earth. And this has what we've been seeing in Minneapolis, the terror from the Trump administration, has really reminded me of a bit at the beginning of that book, The Wretched of the Earth, that has always stuck out to me. And it's one of these moments where Frantz Fanon is kind of talking about the difference between people in a colonized society, in that case, Algeria, under French, occupation and colonization, and the societies like France, right? These kind of like advanced capitalist societies, noting the differences between these two different realities. And he notes that there's something that's very, very clear when you lived in a colonized society, because you see the French flag, right, flying over a barracks. When you see the police officer, when you see the people in authority, you can tell that this is something that is being imposed upon you. He kind of juxtaposed that with what people in capital societies, like in France, experience. And he says this quote: "In capital societies, the educational system, whether lay or clerical, the structure of moral reflexes handed down from father to son, the exemplary honesty of workers who are given a medal after 50 years of good and loyal service, and the affection which springs from harmonious relations and good behavior. All of these aesthetic expressions of respect for the established order serve to create around the exploited person an atmosphere of submission and of inhibition, which lightens the task of policing considerably." What he's getting at there is that, when these systems are strong and when they're working as they are intended to, um, the way that the state, the way that capitalism works to kind of keep people in submission, keep people under the boot of the bosses, it's more subtle. Right. And in fact, sometimes it could be something nice, like, as he noted, somebody gave their life to a company and they get a medal after, years of service. Um, he also notes that in capitalist countries, a multitude of moral teachers, counselors, and bewilderers separate the exploited from those in power. In the colonial countries, on the contrary, the policeman and the soldier, by their immediate presence and their frequent and direct action, maintain contact with the native and advise him by means of rifle butts and napalm not to budge. It is obvious here that the agents of government speak the language of pure force. And what we have seen with this ice rain of terror in Minneapolis and all across this country is that exact same language of pure force. It is brutal, it is disgusting, it is wrong, and we absolutely must defeat it. We should recognize that it also comes at a moment when this system is feeling exceptionally threatened and weak and unsure of itself. So when we go up and stand up against the terror of ICE, recognize that we have tremendous power as working people. And what we're seeing in Minneapolis continues to be an inspiration and something that we should all take along with us, if you're there or anywhere else in this country, in our fight for a more just society.
Yeah, those occupations will fail. There's just like a reason, Stephen Miller was on talking with Jake Tapper, and it's very clear Stephen Miller was sort of hinting at the idea that colonial power should have retained the control that they had after World War II, and that was a big mistake. This is a standard sort of Nazi trope. It's not because the world got all moral that stuff fell. It's because it was impossible for people like that to reproduce it and sustain that sort of brutality over such a mass of humanity. And this will fail too.
Yeah. Well, folks, let's jump over to our conversation with Hasan Piker. I will remind you that if you are not already subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do so. And also subscribe to Jacobin. There is a link below with a really damn good deal for y'all to subscribe to the magazine and to the digital version of it as well. So please do that. But without further ado, let's get to Hasan Piker. Special guest today. We're really thrilled to be joined by Hasan Piker, man. Thank you so much for joining us, friend.
Hi, thank you for having me, guys.
Look, we got a lot to talk about. I wanted to ask you up front, did you get and will you accept your invitation to Donald Trump's Board of Peace of Gaza?
Yeah, I mean, everybody always says I'm a billionaire champagne socialist, so they were right. That's why I was actually raising all these funds through illicit gains, of course. I've been that's why I went to China, so I could purchase a Chinese factory and keep extracting as much surplus labor value as I can, so I could finally get on the Board of Peace, because I love peace. So yeah, no, I didn't realize that it was going to get leaked, but yeah, I'm doing it. I'm going to be a part of it.
Well, I'm looking forward, to seeing what you're going to be able to do there. I mean, look, we're going to talk about a bit about the U.S. and what's been going on in this country with ICE, but I mean, it's just kind of top of my mind. So I wanted to ask you, I mean, this week, what we've been seeing from Trump and particularly his relationship with the Europeans, I mean, are we watching just a full-on decline of U.S. hegemony and the empire here?
I mean, yeah, I think that's the easiest answer. I mean, it's one that I've been talking about for quite a while, but I think in some ways Donald Trump, and this is going to come across as strange for me to say, but I think in some ways Donald Trump is actually moving America in a different towards a different future. Like there is definitely a future vision here with what he's doing, and I think a big chunk of that is responding to what will inevitably happen, like what will inevitably happen to the new world order as liberalism is in crisis once again, only 100 years after the last time this happened, where fascism rose from the ashes. But this time with anthropogenic climate change accelerating and tremendous migration patterns going from the developing world to the developed world. And I think a lot of these great powers around the world are going to draw up their borders and try to secure spheres of influence or harden their position in their own spheres of influence rather than try to maintain global hegemony, as America has done so since post-World War II and what we know as the liberal international rule-based order.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious where you're at on this though, because I definitely, I mean, like what he's done is certainly kind of broken that system. It's been a system that's been broken for a really long time, but there is an aspect of Trump that you wonder how long it will kind of outlast him, right? He's kind of broken it, but I do wonder if there will be some kind of like revival, just in the same way as like after, Trump won, there was all this talk of like a return to norms and normalcy in American politics that, there might be some folks who are just saying like, hey, let's wait out the clock. Because I wonder, even within the Republican Party, if the rest of his party in that kind of like political formation is as like committed to like the insanity of, for example, wanting to like seize Greenland because he thinks it's much bigger than it is.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it does kind of feel like the Democrats and their incompetence, again, something that we've seen from liberal parties in the past as well, only 100 years ago, is leading me to believe that they want to go back to consensus. They want to go back to consensus politics. They want to go back to, maintaining liberalism, but a much more reduced version of liberalism. But Trump was able to single-handedly rewrite American politics in his own vision the last term. And this is something that was very obvious to me, at least, with the Biden administration. I remember seeing someone say like, oh, 2016 Trump was treated like an aberration, but actually the real aberration is 2020 Joe Biden, a return to the old way of doing business, and that the new way of doing business is going to be more Trumpian. Now, does any Republican have the same telegenic presence as Donald Trump that can command a legion of mouth breathers in the same way that he does? Like, these guys demonstrate zealotry that I think the Ayatollah wishes he had in his own base of support amongst the Shia fundamentalists. No, I don't think there's anyone that can like spiritually succeed Donald Trump. Having said that, does that even matter anymore? I don't know. I mean, 80% of the country did not want Donald Trump to invade Greenland militarily. And we already own Greenland. We already own Denmark by way of NATO, and Trump still wanted to make a big show of it. And he was, for all intents and purposes, going to follow through on it, regardless of what people were saying. It's the same with Venezuela. My point is, does democracy even matter if one of the two parties in the duopoly have decided, no, we're actually moving in the direction of fascism?
Well, I mean,
and I don't think it does. You don't need popular consensus. You don't need a popular mandate. Trump certainly doesn't have it, and he's doing whatever he wants right now anyway.
I mean, I think that it's definitely true that like when it comes to like Trump's particular style, like he's a unique individual there for sure. But like you look at what's been happening here in Texas with like Greg Abbott. Like Greg Abbott is not charismatic like Trump at all, but he has kind of like rewritten the entire rule book for how you govern this state. He's spending his time harassing Muslims regularly. There's like a game that they're having of just like some Muslim groups in Texas, and they're making it like a state priority to kind of harass these kind of folks, right? That's Trumpism, and that was something that might not have been part of his politics beforehand, but it shows how like even somebody who doesn't have the Trump style, like they're ready to do this kind of thing because they see that they don't have any real threat from the Democratic Party, and that they can get a lot of the things that they've always wanted to grab by just they've realized that there's nothing holding back the door. If they want to push it, it can go wide open.
Yeah. It's true. That's why I think like you don't necessarily have to be charismatic. If we do have like elections, I don't think JD Vance is capable of leading the Trump train. But if we do have elections again, and there isn't like some sort of martial law, some sort of insurrection act being utilized in one of these cities that Donald Trump decides to siege, and then turn around and pull the martial law card and then decide like we're not going to have elections or something. I don't think we don't really have anything that's going to hold him back. Like I guess we have the courts, but the highest court is completely captive to Trump's interests. And I guess the same question remains: it's the order of capital. Like, is fascism going to present itself as a mechanism of stability once again for our capital owners? So far, so good. So far, it does seem like that. And you see the market reaction to Trump's belligerent behavior, or what we perceive as belligerent behavior, when he says he's going to invade Greenland, and then Europe says, "Oh, we're gonna sell all the, we're going to divest from America," and the market suffers for one day, and then the next day Trump says, "Okay, we made a deal. I'm just getting some of the pieces of Greenland for the Golden Dome or for mineral extraction," even though he also admitted that the mineral extraction is not really the main reason here. Mm-hmm. And then boom, market recovers just like that. So for that reason, it does feel like a lot of the super wealthy capital owners, even those at Davos, with the exception of like the liberal global leadership, the people that actually do own these governments, these countries, who represent their interests, they seem to be fine with Trump's behavior. They seem to be fine with Trump's behavior, even with Liberation Day. For me, once Liberation Day happened and Donald Trump decided to rewrite the international trade design that America has fought long and hard for, where we have this system of IOUs that we get from all these other countries, and then we become the consumption engine of the planet, and we get to enjoy the labor of the hyper exploited global South countries. He decided to ruin that. He decided to basically drop a nuclear bomb on that international design that was quite beneficial for us. And the expectation there was market volatility, instability, and it came for a little bit. But then as far as stock performance goes, we're still back to business as usual. Same with when he decided to engage in consolidation of power among capital, where he decided to utilize the Department of Justice to prosecute Jerome Powell, and the market didn't even respond to that at all. Like that's what's really surprising to me. So I think the super wealthy also see the writing on the wall, and they do think Trump's fascism, or whoever will carry the flame, carry the torch of Trump's fascism, will create a system of stability that benefits them a lot more than the instability that comes from liberalism, with like a modicum of gains for social safety nets here and there.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to just ask one, but before we come back to the U.S. fully, I just want to make a quick point. Is that what we're seeing right now is certainly watching like a certain kind of like rules-based order get smashed by Trump. But all these Europeans and hearing their leaders kind of, hem and haw about this, when we all watched the same thing happen in Gaza over the past few years. I mean, that was something that was so egregious that, what was so egregious about it is like on top of the loss of life and the horror of it was the fact that they didn't even really feel the need to kind of lie or cover it up. It was just a kind of pure power grab by Israel, and a kind of blanket defense by the U.S. So now for these Europeans to kind of act surprised that that breakdown is coming for them, I don't know. I find it to be a little bit rich.
Yeah, I think the reason why they're surprised about it is because I forget who said this. I think it was some dude from Denmark. He said it on the day 2 of Davos. But to be a happy vassal is one thing, but to be a slave is another, right? And I think these guys thought they were Israel. Like they thought that they could be Israel, or not even Israel, because no one really is Israel, as we've seen before. As far as like all of America's, vassals and important trade and security partners, there's only one Israel. And no other country gets to have anywhere near the same level of control and influence over American politics, even at the domestic level. But they at least thought, this system is fine. They don't disrupt our colonial, our historically colonial operations in East Africa. We get to do whatever we want, really. We get to extract super profits from the global South, just as the United States does. Sure, there is no sovereignty in this process. NATO controls, like, because of NATO, our entire military is basically controlled by the United States of America. We've relegated defense to them, and therefore we're not real sovereign states. But things are fine overall because we're not under the boot, right? And maybe every now and then they'll ask us to also participate in crushing the global South, and we'll go in. And Denmark is a great example of this because they talk about how they lost the most amount of people in the illegal occupation of Iraq, and it's like that's nothing to be, that's not exactly something to be proud of. But they thought that they would never get treated like a brown country. That's in the simplest terms, like. You heard these exact same leaders praise the president for his illegal kidnapping of a head of a sovereign state, Venezuela. They thought that was awesome. And then right after he did that, he turned around and said, yeah, now I'm going to actually take Greenland. And they were like, whoa, hold on. We're not brown. Like, we're not, this is Europe. Like, what are you doing? And it shows their hypocrisy. But I think what came after, concessions for Trump, regardless of his belligerent nature, is precisely what was expected. And I'm very interested to see what comes next. Will Europe try to maintain some kind of sovereignty? Will they try to make decisions?
I mean, the winner is going to be, military contractors and arms manufacturers, because we're definitely going to see a remilitarized Europe. There's just no doubt about that.
Oh, for sure. But
so it's a big, this is the point. Yeah, exactly. It's like this thing with Trump is like, there are winners, with a lot of the things that he does, as shocking and ridiculous as they may seem. And I want to kind of shift here, Hasan, and talk about, what we've been seeing in this country. I mean, what we've seen out of Minneapolis has just been heartbreaking. We now have the family, I believe, released this autopsy of Renee Good, and something that we all knew, by the way, was that, this ICE officer just straight up murdered her, has just been proven beyond any shred of a doubt. The shot that killed her looks like it was directly to her head. Something that everybody who saw that video knew from the get-go.
But exiting from her right temple, and it was the third shot.
Yeah. I mean, it is something that has been truly inexcusable. And I'm just curious, as somebody who, is kind of has been watching this unfold, like, what are your takeaways, both for obviously like the brutality of what this government is willing to do to us, but also the kind of response that we've gotten from just like everyday Americans, on what's going on in Minneapolis?
Can I just make a quick point, Hassan, before that? To tie it back to our last conversation, is if the American press can both sides the Iraq invasion. It can both sides one in Minneapolis or Charlotte or wherever too, and that's exactly what we're seeing. So Mark Carney's saying we never thought this would happen to us. Well, if it's happening in Minneapolis, it could happen in Greenland. But go ahead, Hasan.
No, absolutely. I mean, it is a I guess softer version of that. It's the Imperial Boomerang. It's I mean, I used to talk about LRADs all the time, long range acoustic devices, right? They were first implemented in Iraq for crowd control purposes, and then only a decade later was being used in Portland, and now every police precinct has one, right? Same goes for all these different tools that we use first in the colonies and then at the domestic home front, and the same systems of surveillance that people experiment with in places like Gaza, maybe even AI targeting and drone warfare that we've seen happening in Gaza to the captive Palestinian population and the genocide will inevitably happen to Americans in the domestic front as well. We're not there yet, but that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. As this evolution has played itself out in the same exact ways over and over again. But yeah, tying that back to Minneapolis and what's going on there, I think we're in a unique time as far as the administration not really having an organized response or reaction. At least in the past, there were boogeymen that you could point to in the Cold War, communism, the Soviets, things of that nature. And right now, America, in the aftermath of the dissolution of the USSR, has been the domineering force and is basically just hurting itself as the contradictions worsen. So now they're just trying to invent villains, I guess, and sometimes that villain that they invent is a 37-year-old white mom who is in her Honda Pilot with plushie toys in the glove compartment. And then they try to present her as like a left-wing domestic terrorist, a left-wing extremist. It doesn't work. I don't think many people actually believe it, with the exception of the 20% base of support that is firmly MAGA. That much I have seen. How successful will that be? I don't know. How much pressure will the public take from this administration, especially as their economic conditions worsen? Well, that remains to be seen. I'm going to go to Minneapolis tomorrow morning to attend the general strike that's taking place there. So I'm very interested to see what kind of labor initiatives could play a role in maybe stopping or offering pushback to this kind of domestic colonial endeavors.
Well, I mean, that's been the one thing that has been, fairly kind of inspiring or like hopeful in this like really dark moment, has just been seeing the willingness of like everyday people to take tremendous risks, continuing to go out there after. Now, we have seen that these agents literally will kill people, right? And the fact that people continue to go out there, put themselves on the line, has been something that I find to be particularly inspiring. But there's this fundamental question about whether or not that's going to be able to be connected to politics in this country. We have seen, on some level, certain Democrats have kind of upped their rhetoric around ICE. I feel like, we've interviewed a few candidates here in Texas even who have gone as far as to say that they support abolish ICE. It is notable, though, that like James Tallarico and Jasmine Crockett, two people who people present as progressives, neither of them have come out in support of this, despite the fact that this is something that, you see a lot of support from everyday folks. So, I mean, I think one of the questions is going to be whether or not like individuals and labor and like working class people can kind of seize and fight against the system, because I have serious doubts about whether or not we're going to see serious political action from the Democratic Party on this.
Yeah, I mean, they're not gonna save us. I mean, even the resistance liberalism of 2016 that treated Trump like a unique factor and not just a logical conclusion to the American reactionary movement. They presented at least a stronger opposition. And in the process, they were able to tell people, look, liberalism is not failing. Like, we're still here. We still got it, right? This is not us. That's what we kept repeating over and over again when this was very much us, right? They're not even giving us the dignity at this point. And I think I read something last night, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Hakeem Jeffries has actually mounted this like fake opposition towards ICE, where they were able to cut some must-pass bills so that they were able to chop down some must-pass bills that were going to have ICE funding in it, so that they could, instead of mounting an opposition towards that, like across the board, and then having some sort of leverage, they decided like, no, we'll present an opposition to ICE funding, but.
Hassan, it's because they're scared. Sorry, I mean, but like
Yeah.
this is the fundamental problem with like the Democratic Party today. Is like, especially around immigration, they're so scared because after losing in 2024 and losing like across the board, not just with white voters, but with Hispanic voters and stuff like that. Like the Democrats are afraid to touch immigration, despite the fact that this, like specifically on ICE, this is something that we are now seeing that like most people are seeing that like, hey, this isn't anything that I want to see in a free and democratic country. Armed men walking around and ripping people out of their homes, like in their pajamas or in their underwear. But they're so afraid to actually take a stance on this that's why you get this half-assed measure, which one isn't going to satisfy folks who correctly want to see the end of ICE, and is also not going to do very much to bring over, let's say, like the moderates or the centrists into that kind of political program, because they're not tuned into this. They're the constituency for messing around the edges on this issue is just not there. So you either get full-on barbarism from the right or nothing from the Democrats. And you could just see that like they have no willingness to really take on this issue. And there's a fundamental cowardice of this party to take this on. And we are living the consequences of it right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, no one is coming to save us. We have to keep organizing, and we have to be militant in our organizing. We have to be disciplined in our organizing. And we have to be there. We have to be an unstoppable force. We have to consistently show our discontent over and over again by way of protest, but also by pressuring the Democratic Party as well, by trying to unseat bad Democrats in general, and replace them with Democrats that will do the right thing. But that's obviously not the end all be all either. But I think that is at least trying to move this country in a positive direction by using the current instability, and then make way for, I guess, more radical change, hopefully further down the line, or at least that's my vision for change. Having said that, however, I don't know how successful that will be, especially when it's very clear that the powers that be within the Democratic Party, the establishment Democrats, are not even remotely invested in making any change whatsoever. I don't think it's necessarily fear, really. I mean, I think like that's the, I mean, maybe it is. I don't know. I go back and forth on this quite a bit. This is like a classic thing that I ask every politician. I ask them, are your colleagues, are they stupid or are they cynical? Like if they're cynical, that means they're aware of what's going on and they just refuse to lean into it because they have some other perverse incentives there, like corporate lobbying or whatever. Or are they stupid because they're just like oblivious to what's going on? They're so tunneled in. They're so echo chambered. They're so much of a product of this system that they rarely ever encounter like a real human being that tells them like, we don't like when people are murdering us in the streets, or when the administration is saying that you can violate the Fourth Amendment with an administrative warrant and just like break through people's doors as ICE agents and do door-to-door operations demanding to see people's passports. Demanding show me your papers, like that kind of stuff. I think it's a bit of both, but
Chuck Schumer's not afraid to stand up. Chuck Schumer's not afraid to stand up for an unpopular issue if it's like Trump doing too much diplomacy with Iran instead of bombing them. But this stuff, like I genuinely think he doesn't give a shit except what it means for his political. I think Renee Good is a inconvenience for him more than a political, obligation for him to respond to.
Yeah. It reminds me of the way that like the Gulf nations treat Palestinians. Like that's what it feels like. Like Chuck Schumer is basically Mohammed bin Salman in private, being like, I don't fucking care about these Palestinians. I hope they would just go away so I could just like have direct flights from Riyadh to Tel Aviv. Like that's what I want. But my people don't want that. So I, in order to make sure that I never have like any sort of revolt or any sort of revolt, I have to keep playing ball aesthetically. But Chuck Schumer's not even doing that, I guess.
I mean,
Mohammed bin Salman has launched a stronger opposition to Israel than Chuck Schumer has to Donald Trump on many of these issues that the base is demanding.
No, it's true. And I think that they've, believe that they've been given a gift from God, that they're just going to be able to reap the rewards of Trump's unpopularity in the midterms. And, I'm sure they will have an advantage, but I don't think that it's going to be as successful as they're kind of hoping and planning on.
Absolutely not. I don't think so either. Because I think, I mean, you guys have all seen the polls. Democrats are underwater, and that shouldn't be the case, right? But there's a reason for why Democrats are underwater. It's because of the mass discontent due to their inability to meet the moment, due to their lack of interest in doing anything really, and even like their disinterest in even communicating some of the things that they're doing. This was exactly what happened with Joe Biden as well. It's something I've been thinking about quite a bit, because like Zoran has been doing stuff with Lena Khan, going after, junk fees and things like that, right? This is stuff that Biden did as well. This is technically, kitchen table issues, bread and butter that would win you a lot of favors with the masses. And Joe Biden was so bad at communicating these things that they were doing that people simply did not care. But now everyone's celebrating Zoran. Like if I was Joe, if I was Brandon, I'd kill myself. I'd literally be like, accelerate the ass cancer. This is crazy. They got a Muslim 34-year-old communist that's doing the same shit that I did with literally my people, like the people that I appointed. And everyone loves it when he's doing it. That's Riz. But when I did it, it was sexual harassment. What the fuck's going on? I'd just be like, nah, it's over. But part of that is because he couldn't message it. He did not want to message around it at all, or he was incapable of doing so because he was far too old. And Democrats don't even do that either. Democrats don't even, they don't even put forth an aesthetic posture, right? Let alone one that has some tangible results, or just changing or making it more difficult for the Republicans to continue dominating the American population in the ways that they are. So it's just all bad across the board.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, it's because the things that they don't really have like a unifying belief behind it, other than kind of maintaining and holding on to power. I mean, that was the advantage that Zoran had, and has been an interesting thing in the past few months after he won. All of these folks being like, oh, well, Zoran won because he was really good at vertical videos, or Zoran won because, he's a young, interesting guy. And it's like, don't get me wrong, it's great to have a good looking, fun, charismatic dude as the leader. But no, it's because people liked when he talked about making buses fast and free. People liked Freeze the Rant. And the Democrats are afraid of doing something like that because, I mean, hell, this is something that's a direct threat to their donors and to the class that they represent, wealthy people and landlords. I think this is going to be a crisis that's going to go on for a long time within the Democratic Party. Hasan, thank you so much for coming on the Jacobin Show, man. We really appreciate being able to speak with you here.
Thank you for having me. This was wonderful.
I mean, folks who, Hasanabi, that's the Twitch username, right?
Yeah, Hasanabi on Twitch, and then Hasan the Hun on Twitter, and Hasan Piker everywhere else.
There you go.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun having Hasan on the program, wasn't it?
I mean, it's good to see Hasan again after our little trip around the bean in Chicago last summer at the DSA convention.
Look, and I mean, the work that he's been doing is really great. Happy to hear that he's going to Minneapolis, and really shining a light on what we're seeing.
And one thing, I didn't mention, but he was messaging even from the DNC before he was disinvited about this immigration stuff. I remember him going on Dan Le Batard's sports show, talking about what an affirmative, pro-immigration message would look like. And so it wasn't just the Palestine stuff that was ignored by the party that's meant to oppose this fascism, and which failed, and I think past tense failed. Now, maybe we can muster up some sort of democratic response, but really it's going to come from people getting out there, this general strike, these sorts of actions, because we don't have a opposition party in this country right now.
Well, folks, please continue watching Jacobin, like and subscribe and share. They're doing a lot to try to limit the reach of this channel. So make sure that y'all are keeping up with it and sharing it with folks. I will also remind people, in addition to subscribing to the magazine, My book, The Myth of Red Texas, is out for pre-order. It goes into the radical history of Texas's past. It goes into cowboys standing up and fighting for the open range, the idea that land belongs to the people, radical farmers, black and white, uniting against the power structures of the early Texas economy, and a movement that almost overtook power in the state that has been purposefully silenced and forgotten. It's all in this book. I'm really excited for people to read it and to hear everyone's thoughts. It is 15% now, 15% off now at OR Books. Please use that link. Don't buy it from Amazon. Get it from OR Books. The link is below. I've been so touched by all of the support and hearing from everybody that they pre-ordered it. If you haven't, get on it, friends. And yeah, we'll be back here with some good stuff. We're going to have Cornell West on the program soon. We're going to do a deep dive to the TVA soon, hopefully with Matt Huber and much, much more. So stay tuned at the Jacobin Show. Everybody have a good rest of the week. Take care of yourself. Look out for one another, and solidarity, friends.